Okay, let's dive right in because we are talking about an absolute earthquake in the landscape of modern medicine. In this explainer, we're going to unpack something completely unprecedented, a rapid-fire, federal-level regulatory acceleration of psychedelic medicine. Now, whether you've been following this space for years or you're literally just tuning in today, the sheer speed at which the government is suddenly moving to fast-track these once taboo compounds, it's staggering. It really is. So today, we're breaking down exactly what just went down, who the massive players are, and what this actually means for the future of mental health care.
To really understand why this is happening at breakneck speed, we have to look at the motivation. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary said it point blank. He stated that these medications have the real potential to address our nation's severe mental health crisis. We're talking treatment-resistant depression, alcoholism, and other serious substance abuse conditions. Top federal officials are urgently, and I mean urgently, pivoting to perception-altering medications as a serious, viable solution to what is frankly an escalating public health emergency. This is no longer fringe science, folks. It is priority federal policy. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. A sudden regulatory shift. 2. The fast-track trio. 3. Beyond the vouchers. 4. Building psychedelic infrastructure. And finally, 5. The reality check. Let's get right to it.
Starting with Section 1. A sudden regulatory shift. From executive order to immediate FDA action.
You've got to look at how wildly compressed this timeline is. On Saturday, April 18, 2026, President Trump signs an executive order specifically aimed at accelerating access to treatments for serious mental illness. Then, boom! Less than a week later, on Friday, April 24th, the FDA actually delivers on that directive. Instantly, they award 3 highly coveted priority review vouchers to psychedelic drug candidates. And on that exact same day, the FDA also clears early-phase clinical trials for noribogaine, which is a derivative of the African iboga shrub, to treat alcohol use disorder. I mean, we are looking at a historic level of compliance and speed from an agency that is traditionally known for moving very, very carefully.
Now, to truly grasp the magnitude of this news, we need to understand the engine that's driving it all. The Commissioner's National Priority Voucher, or CNPV. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but it is a highly coveted regulatory tool. Basically, think of it as the ultimate VIP fast pass at an amusement park, but for pharmaceutical approvals. The FDA grants these specifically to breakthrough therapies to dramatically shorten the review process for new drug applications.
And to understand just how powerful that fast pass is, let's do the math. A standard FDA review process conventionally takes around 10 to 12 months. But with a CNPV, that target review time is slashed down to just 1 or 2 months. This is an absolute game changer for patients who have exhausted all their traditional therapies. It means life-saving treatments could arrive on the market in a tiny fraction of the time anyone previously modeled. We could literally be seeing approvals by this summer.
Moving on to Section 2. The fast-tracked trio, the big winners of the FDA vouchers.
All right, so here are our 3 golden ticket winners. First up, we've got Compass Pathways with their synthetic psilocybin, known as COMP360. They're targeting treatment-resistant depression. They're a for-profit company, and they're expecting a rolling new drug application by the second half of 2026. Right below them, and this is fascinating, is the Usona Institute. They are also working with psilocybin, but for major depressive disorder. The catch? They are a nonprofit medical research organization. So that really shows the administration is throwing its weight behind diverse research models. Finally, we have Transcend Therapeutics. Now, they are being acquired by the Japanese pharmaceutical giant Otsuka in a massive deal worth up to $1.2 billion. They're developing methylone, a non-hallucinogenic analog of MDMA for PTSD, and they're just entering Phase 3.
But looking at that list, it brings up a massive question, doesn't it? Let's just address the elephant in the room right now. Why was Resilient Pharmaceuticals' MDMA program unexpectedly snubbed? Because for a long time, industry insiders heavily predicted that Resilient, which you might know by their former name, Lykos Therapeutics, would easily receive this exact voucher for their MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD.
Well, when you contrast the 2 PTSD programs, the FDA's rationale actually starts to make a lot of sense. Otsuka's methylpsilone program is way less mature. I mean, it's just entering Phase 3, but it's still secure the voucher. Resilient, on the other hand, well, they were rejected by the FDA via a complete response letter back in August of 2024. At the time, the FDA cited some major issues, like a failure to collect positive adverse events and high rates of prior MDMA use among study participants. The agency told them, hey, you need a fresh clinical trial to address these shortcomings. But Resilient hasn't initiated a new Phase 3 yet. So this clearly illustrates that despite this huge new push for speed, the agency is definitely maintaining its strict expectations for rigorous clinical data and patient safety.
Which brings us to Section 3, Beyond the Vouchers, expanding the psychedelic field.
Because there's a lot more going on than just those 3 vouchers. Let's talk about prodrugs for a second. A prodrug is an inactive compound that basically metabolizes inside your body to release the active drug. Your body does the work. Recently, the FDA granted breakthrough therapy designation to a drug called luvacilocin. It's developed by Reunion Neuroscience for postpartum depression, and it's a prodrug of 4-HODP. But here is the truly incredible part: the delivery and the duration. Unlike classic oral psychedelics that can keep you tripping all day, this one is administered via a subcutaneous injection. It produces a predictable, acute experience that is roughly 3 to 4 hours shorter than drugs like LSD. That shorter duration is absolutely crucial, because it means a patient wouldn't have to stay overnight in a clinic, and that drastically lowers the cost of care and massively increases access.
And the momentum just keeps building. Look at these rapid-fire milestones hitting the wire. Psychedelic just initiated their multinational Phase 3 paradigm program for their molecule CYB003 for major depressive disorder, aiming to recruit over 200 patients. We also saw the FDA clear Demerex to begin Phase 1 clinical trials of noribogaine for alcohol use disorder, which is a historic first for an ibogaine derivative here in the US. Plus, the FDA announced they intend to release final clinical guidance for sponsors imminently. It just goes to show the wider industry is maturing at a rapid pace.
All right, Section 4, Building Psychedelic Infrastructure, the Essential Support System.
Listen, getting a drug approved by the FDA is a massive victory for sure, but it is only half the battle. If you don't actually have a system in place to deliver it, the drug helps exactly no one. The Pink Elephant Accelerator, they're a new venture fund in this space, recently described this exact problem as a critical gap in the ecosystem. Because for years, capital poured almost exclusively into drug discovery and clinical trials. But now that the heavy capital drought we saw from 2022 to 2024 is finally ending, money has to flow into the physical and digital systems that will actually support the delivery of these therapies in the real world.
And the core infrastructure needs here are vast. We need robust education and training platforms to prepare psychiatrists and therapists. We need specialized clinical support and delivery software. We're even looking at AI-assisted integration tools to help patients process their experiences, along with highly sophisticated patient acquisition systems, the whole shebang. Initiatives like Elephant Gate Seed Program are out there right now, actively deploying $150,000 checks to startups specifically to fix these precise operational bottlenecks. Because without this layer, those newly fast-tracked drugs, they'll have nowhere to go. Finally, Section 5, the reality check, what this does and doesn't mean.
Let's ground ourselves for a second. While the executive order is a giant leap forward, we have to look impartially at what it actually achieves. Yes, it dramatically speeds up FDA reviews. It expands right to try access for investigational compounds. It hands out $50 million in ARPA-H funding to match state-level research. And it mandates data sharing between agencies like the FDA and the VA. But on the flip side, we have to look at what it does not do. It does not immediately deschedule these drugs. Psilocybin and the others remain Schedule I controlled substances, at least for now. It does not mandate insurance coverage, which means early access might sadly be limited to those who can afford pretty steep out-of-pocket costs. And most importantly, it does not bypass standard clinical safety trials. These drugs still have to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they are safe and effective.
Betty Aldworth, the co-executive director of MAPS, summed this up perfectly. She acknowledged the breakthrough, but she warned that right now people are still traveling abroad or self-medicating out of pure desperation. She points out that these executive order efforts absolutely must be paired with regulated psychedelics, provider training, and robust insurance coverage. So yes, the regulatory red tape has been brilliantly slashed, but the societal and commercial rollout, that still faces a remarkably steep hill.
Which brings us to our final thought. The door has been blown wide open, with FDA reviews for these powerful perception-altering compounds slashed from nearly a year to just a single month. We are stepping into completely uncharted territory. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder. Will the psychedelic revolution ultimately be defined by rapid, widespread healing for the millions suffering from mental illness, or by regulatory regret if we move too fast without the right safety nets in place? It's a fascinating space, it's changing daily, and we'll definitely be watching it closely. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning what you learn.